Fish this lake, but I've always wanted to. You can see it's absolutely stunning canyon behind me. And today I'm going to be filming the second part of my Kokanee formula fishing video. So in the first part, which I put a link up above here and also put a link at the end of this video, I talked about those fundamental things that you really need to focus on in order to catch kokanee. But here we're going to zero in, we're going to tighten up right in the center of that formula and focus on a lot of the things that anglers tend to obsess over. And that is going to be tackle. So I'm talking about your rods, reels, downriggers, things like that. Your terminal gear, all the shiny things that attract the kokanee and get them to bite, as well as your bait. There's a lot of obsession over bait and bait recipes. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my experience with that today. So I want to get out on the water here while I have shadows of the canyon still cast across the lake and before the wind gets up too much. And let's see if we can find some kokanee out here on this beautiful central Washington lake. First kokanee in the boat. Not expecting any giants in this lake. They should average around 10 to 11 inches. But they're beautiful. Sometimes I'll speed up like that. Set the hook. You'll notice today I'm not using downriggers. You don't absolutely need downriggers to target kokanee. You can do it with lead droppers like I'm doing today. And that allows me to get down there. I have a whole video on how I use lead to get down to these kokanee. And I'll post that link above and at the end of this video. But downriggers do really offer a lot of advantages, letting you to precisely target those kokanee. Now if you're in a powerboat and you're targeting kokanee with downriggers in 30 feet or less depth down, you might want to use a longer setback, closer to 100 foot before you clip into the downrigger, just so that you don't get some avoidance of the boat, and that makes it harder catch the kokanee because they'll avoid the boat. They don't like motor noise. There we go. So use that 100-foot setback. Now, one thing you'll notice is today I'm using these bright blue glass rods. They're made out of fiberglass from Swate. And fiberglass is really one of my favorite rod materials for kokanee. Some people will argue that kokanee have very soft mouths, and I do tend to lean on that side of the fence. Others say that it's not that their mouths are soft, but that they're very energetic, which is also very true. They really bounce around a lot and make a lot of erratic actions. Either way, they're extremely good at throwing the hook, or pulling the hook out of their mouth. And I've just found that with a softer rod, I get much higher landing ratio, especially with these glass rods. So that's what I actually helped design these Swate blueback rods. This is our fiber hammer series. So I got that carbon fiber handle there to make it so that the handle doesn't get torn up as much going in and out of rod holders all day. And this is made out of a tea glass, so it still has a lot of backbone if you happen to get into a bigger fish. And it can also handle trolling up to 2 or 3 ounce lead cannonballs without any issue. You'll see how soft it is on the tip. I can really bend this thing down. I wouldn't be able to do that with a graphite rod. On top of that, I'm going to put a small line counter reel. There's a variety of these. Really, you just need to match something that isn't too oversized or too weighty. But you can really use anything you want, but I really do like a line counter reel. These are the small, compact line counter reels from Daiwa. This is their Lexo 100 line counters. Great little reel, perfect size for kokanee. Isn't oversized for the rod, so it's got a nice slow gear ratio. It's perfect for this fishery. Now, there's a whole bunch of companies manufacturing kokanee rods, especially glass ones. So we have the Swait Blue back here, and I'll include links to all of these products below. But there's also the Eagle Claw kokanee rod, the Featherlight, which is a great value rod. Lama Glass, Daiwa, Akuma, Tika, Velocity. They have all these different rod companies out there making really nice kokanee rods. I do highly encourage you investing in a decent set of kokanee rods. It's just going to increase that landing ratio. You'll see a lot of folks incorporating snubbers. There's a bite fish. Got him. Incorporating snubbers into their setups. Or snubber is basically just a stretchy piece of tubing that you tie into your line. But I found you really don't need it when you have a nice soft kokanee rod. Got a double going here. I might have lost this fish. Can't tell. We'll see. I still have this guy though. Oh, I still got this guy. See if we can get him in. Keep pressure on that one, so I'm going to keep trolling. That's key with these kokanee. Told you how energetic they are. Still got that guy. Gotta keep trolling here. Keep pressure on them. Rubber nets here come in handy because, as you can see, I don't want to be dealing with a knot stuck in a nylon net. This guy. Keep the pressure on it. Oh yeah, he's still there. Yeah, having that rubber net really does help. Because then when you get a double like this, you're not dealing with a barb stuck in a nylon net. I was able to just pop that out in a hurry and get back to fighting this other fish. How did he do that? He swam right through that little gap on my net. I'll just have to throw him in. Look at that. The one little hole in my net that I have. He went through it. Well, that's what you get for not repairing your nets, I guess. That's funny. But I had him sealed up pretty tight. Got 2 hooks in him. One of them gill plate, one way back here, and one in the mouth. Alright. There you go. Not giants, but still nice and tasty. Wash that blood off there. Okay. I tore this net my last trip out, and I just put a zip tie there to close that gap, but Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. Okay, bet you that doesn't ever happen again. Now you don't necessarily have to use glass rods. I just prefer glass rods, especially when running downriggers or running dropper weights under 3 ounces. I have some heavier glass rods that I control more lead on, but you can also use light or medium light action graphite rods like this one here. This is an 8-foot medium light rod. So it has a lot of flex in the tip, so it has that slower action on the tip. These work great for kokanee too. They tend to have a little bit more backbone, a little stiffer down towards the base of the rod. They're really great for trolling those heavier weights or for trolling high drag tackle like these lake trolls here. So you can use graphite. Even some of the ugly sticks out there are really nice because they have that graphite base and a fiberglass tip, so they kind of combines the best of both worlds. So don't completely rule out graphite as an option. You know, a really good way to find a quality graphite kokanee rod, especially if you're running droppers or lead weights that are 3 ounces or more, or even under, is to look for steelhead plug rods. They're absolutely perfect. They have that slower action on tip that allows that plug to wiggle. They have that backbone down at the bottom, so you won't run out of power on your rod. So you can look for those when you're shopping around for your heavier lead rods, or if you're just looking for something with a little more backbone. He's still there. Oh, there he goes. Good fish. Now, for the same reason that I like fiberglass rods, I like to use monofilament as my main line. This just helps to keep pressure on the fish as it stretches. It's way stretchier than other lines like braid or fluorocarbon. And these fish are not leader shy, so you really don't need to worry about that. 10 pound is more than ample for most of our fisheries. So just use that. Just make sure you respool it every year, because it does degrade as it gets exposed to the sun and dries out and gets wet and dries out and gets wet over and over again. Can we get this guy in the boat? Oh no, he came off right there. That sucks so bad. Notice today I'm using a Dodger and about 6 to 8 inches behind that little micro hoochie. This is from Paulina Peak Tackle. I do really prefer Dodgers over lake trolls. So there's two ways, or two primary attractors that people use for kokanee, and that is Dodgers, which are like these spoon-shaped blades here that can be anywhere from 3.5 to 6 or 8 inches even, although most kokanee Dodgers are in that 3 to 6 inch range. Those things move side to side and create action. And that action is imparted on your lure, which is why you want to run your lure relatively close to the Dodger. I just like Dodgers because they're a lot less drag. You can feel the fight better, and most of the lures that I run don't have any action. They don't produce their own action, and I think that's the main thing I want to iterate today. There are many different manufacturers out there. I happen to predominantly fish Paulina Peak because they produce a wide variety of Dodgers in different shapes. There's like this teardrop Dodger I just fished, has a very tight side-to-side action. I've got their Performance Peak, which is more like a teardrop, a more ovate teardrop Dodger. It's heavier, produces a slower and wider side-to-side action. And then there's the skateboard style dodgers, which they really thump hard side to side, and they also kind of create a little bit of lift and move a little bit up and down too. So they have all those different varieties and different base metals, so copper, gold, silver, and they work really good. Whereas here I have a lake troll. So a lake troll is basically a series of rotating blades. Some have large blades, some have small blades, and have varying degrees of drag. Max Lures produces one that's made out of plastic that has low drag, but it doesn't create quite that disturbance in the water that those fish can detect using their lateral line. So it all kind of varies, but in large part, what I use to help me decide what type of gear I'm going to run is predominantly going to be by the depth at which I'm fishing and just what the fish are kind of telling me. So if I go out and I'm marking quite a few fish in concentrated schools, or at least in areas where I'm not having to draw a lot of fish in, or I'm just not sure where the fish are, you know, dodgers are where it's going to be for me. If I need to draw in some fish from a long way, these lake trolls here with all these spinning blades, they really can put out quite a signal and pull fish in from a long way away, especially if I'm fishing really large bodies of water, or I'm fishing really deep and it's heavily overcast, and those fish are relying less on sight and more on that lateral line to help them detect the disturbances in the water and draw them in to hit the lure. Now, like I said, one of the main things I want to emphasize is that either the lure or the dodger must impart some kind of action, right? Kokanee just not into stuff that's not moving side to side and bouncing all around. That's why you catch them on the turns a lot, because it changes direction. The lure changes direction or it drops. They really like erratic motion. So dodgers, they give you that motion. And that's why you should run that lure tight, 6 to 8 inches. Now you don't want to run, you can run a lure with its own action tight behind a dodger, but it can't be so much action that it actually, they can't negate each other. Sometimes you'll have a lure that's just so aggressive in its motion that it actually negatively impacts the motion of the dodger, or vice versa, and you get fewer bites. So I tend to just prefer small, light lures run tight to a dodger. That's why I like Paulina Peak. They just have a huge variety of micro hoochies. They also have some flutter style hoochies and spinners, which are all very light, low drag, that run great behind their dodgers. And that's just why I love that company. They just produce quality product. But there's a ton of other companies out there. You got Max and Rocky Mountain Tackle, Gold Customs, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And there's a lot of ways you can make your own custom gear, but I'm not going to get into that today. Fish. Is he still there? Nope, came off. He's nibbling on it. But there are also other lures out there that impart their own action. So especially if I'm running lake trolls, or I'm just having trouble getting those fish to hit and take it, then it's time to maybe step up and try those lures with action. And that's going to include things like Kokanee cut plugs from Brad's, which I got here. Just a little rotating lure right there. It spins pretty aggressively and widely. Apex spoons, Pro Troll spoons, the flutter hoochies from Paulina Peak. All of those lures will impart their own action. Some of them put out a little bit more drag than others, and so you kind of have to balance that out. But the key is make sure that you have something imparting action on the lure. You basically want your bait to dance. If you don't have dancing corn or maggots, your probability of catching kokanee declines pretty dramatically. I haven't had a bite on this rod here for a little bit. I'm going to shift colors. They do change their color preference throughout the day depending on the angle of the sun. On these really bright days, I really like to run gold or copper. It just seems like that color turns them on. I'm still catching them on the silver moon jelly over here. Speak of the devil. So it does tell me that they're still willing to take silver, so I'm going to go to a silver and gold dodger and see if I can get them to take that. Now, in part 1 of the Kokanee formula series, I discussed how light penetrates at different wavelengths down to different depths. So I use this information to help guide my decisions in terms of color selection for micro hoochies. And again, this is why I like Paulina Peak so much, is they have a wide variety of micro hoochie colors that will accommodate all those different depths in which I'm targeting. And so I can, if I'm fishing shallow, I can pick the right color for that shallow depth. If I'm fishing deep, I can pick the right color for that depth. So generally I'm going to fish those warmer pinks, reds, and oranges shallower, and as I go deeper and deeper, I'm going to start shifting into the yellows, greens, purples, and blues. And since they have a micro hoochie color that matches all those different depths, they even have some that combine different colors. It allows me to fish those ones at a variety of depths and be more flexible. So you should definitely check out their website, and I'll put a link to that below. Okay, let's talk about the basic setup here. So I have my main line tied into a bead chain. I've got a sliding weight rig on there. That allows me to change out my weight rapidly and fish at different depths depending on what I need to do. But another thing is too, is it allows that weight to slide freely up and down the line, and I don't have to worry about the kokanee using that to leverage themselves off the hook as easily. That goes to a bead chain, 18 to 24 inches of 10-pound monofilament down to a dodger. Any dodger shape, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna run the same rig no matter what dodger I'm running. And then 6 to 8 inches to my micro hoochie. So there's the setup. So you got bead chain on my bumper in front of my dodger, 6 to 8 inch leader. Now if I was running on a downrigger, the only thing I do is I just scrap that weight in the front, but I'm going to keep that bead chain there because when you retrieve these dodgers, they spin like a big spoon and they will wind up your main line, so that bead chain helps prevent that. There we go, number 10 for the day. Look, that came off in the net. Very nice. That makes it easy on me. There we go. Last fish of the day, number 10. Time to head in. Now, one of the things I didn't discuss was bait, and I wanted to do that when I get back to shore. I'm going to go over some of the different types of bait that I like to use and my different types of cures and scents that I apply to those baits. I would say that bait is one of the most important things that you can focus on, because without it, your catch rate goes down significantly. But there are different types of bait that you can use. Corn is one of the most dominant baits in the kokanee industry. But there's a lot of other baits that I've run and had equal success with, and I'll talk about those when we get back to shore. So for now, I'm just going to get my things put away, and then we'll talk about bait. But be sure to watch the first part of this kokanee formula. So I've never been to this lake. It's 9 o'clock and I've already limited out because I applied those basic parts of the formula, and every time I do that, no matter what lake I go to, I come away with kokanee. And you will too if you apply those things. Alright, we'll see you on the shore.
Alright guys, let's take a little bit of time and talk about bait. There's a whole bunch of different baits out there that I could recommend, but really there's only two that I'm going to focus on. One is shoe peg corn. I like shoe peg because it has the firmest kernel and stays on the hook a lot better. So that's my preferred corn. You can use any corn out there. Obviously not cream corn, that wouldn't hold on the hook too well. But any of your corn will work. This one just happens to be a little bit bigger, firmer kernel, which I like. The other is Berkeley's Gulp Maggots. Now, I started kokanee fishing with corn, and I still fish corn predominantly today. That being said, if you cure them or treat them with scents and oils the same way, there's no difference. I've run Berkeley against the Gulp Maggots versus shoe peg corn, and over 50 fish, there was absolutely no difference. It was like 24-26. It was an even break. With identical dodgers and flasher setups, it didn't seem to matter. That is it. I mean, they're essentially the same. In fact, in a lot of ways, the maggots are superior. They stay on the hook better. They don't spoil as quickly. So there's a lot of advantages to running the maggots. So why do I run the corn? Because I'm confident in it. I've been doing it for a long time. It's just something that I know I can catch fish on. I'm sure I can catch it on the maggots. I've done it before, but I just prefer to stick with my confidence. Now, there's a lot of different ways to cure up your corn. Tons of scents on the market. I'm a big fan of ProCure scents just because of the diversity of scents they have available, and oils and dyes as well. But one of the simplest ways you can cure your corn or treat your corn or maggots is soak it in tuna oil from Chicken of the Sea, tuna and oil. Just squeeze the oil out into your corn the night before and let it soak overnight, or you can do it on the maggots. And it works wonders. I've moved away from doing this predominantly because it gets expensive buying just cans of tuna over and over again, and I get far more bait treated using the ProCure cures. So I typically run just two different types of cure. I run a early season, which is predominantly krill oil and shrimp oil. I really like the water soluble scents from ProCure. They soak into the corn really well, and what I do with my corn to firm it up even more and to make it draw in more of the scent, I will drain it. I will put some non-iodized salt on it, so don't use normal table salt, use like canning salt. Non-iodized salt on it for an hour. That shrivels up the corn, hardens it up a little bit, draws the moisture out, and then I dump this water-soluble scents in there, and it slurps it up. I mean, it's just they re-expand, they rehydrate, and they're just packed with these delicious oils. And that kokanee bites down on that thing, the corn, all the oils explode in its mouth. It just wants to commit to that bite. It tastes good. I've been fishing this corn underwater. I'll have it underwater for a half an hour, I pull it out, and I still squeeze that corn and break the kernel, and I still see oils coming out of it. So it's a really good technique. Oftentimes I'll add a little bit of anise oil to this early season cure. I do also like to add color sometimes. So like this one, I add the badass bait dye from ProCure, bright green, but I've used orange and red as well. Later in the season, I transitioned to a slightly different cure, and that is primarily my garlic bloody tuna cure. And I like this cure, especially when the water temps on the surface start to get above 65. It seems to me that they start shifting to a garlic bite more and more frequently, but you never know, so I always like to have both cures available. Okay, that's it as far as cures. When you're putting them on the hook, you want to make sure that you go through the top of the corn kernel. It'll stay on better. Don't try and go through the bottom. If you go through the top meatiest part and have that facing, the bottom of the kernel facing down towards the fish, it stays on better, it runs better. You only need one piece of corn per hook. It's just not worth it having a bunch of corn on there. It actually weights down your lure and makes the reduces the action on the lure. For the maggots, it's straightforward. They stay on the hook really well, so you can put them on there anyway. So you can see here I got my 10 kokanee. So just be sure and watch part 1 and focus on those core techniques. and then you can start dialing in using all the things I covered today. And we'll see you out on the water next time. Be safe, and if you have any questions, feel free to put in the comments below. If you want to see new kokanee videos, if you want me to address certain topics, let me know, or other non-kokanee. And be sure and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. You guys have a good one. See you later.